Well, good afternoon. Ethan back for another review. Not a beer review today, but an album review. Iron Maiden's self-titled debut, Iron Maiden. I was outside earlier just exercising and I was listening to this and it just struck me how great, well, I've always thought it was great, but I was just listening to it and I just had to come on here and talk about a little bit about the album and how much I like it. It just struck me how great it was as I was listening to it, really jamming along to it. This was released April 14th, 1980 in Kingsway London Studios under EMI label and producer Will Malone. The album is 37 minutes, 39 seconds long. It was recorded in late 79 and early 80. This is considered a classic in the new wave of British heavy metal genre, which was sometimes abbreviated NWOBHM, which is a movement of metal, a new wave of metal, so to speak, that sort of started after the punk movement in England, which was the mid to late 70s. And you had other bands in the genre, like, while early Def Leppard's considered new wave of British heavy metal, some Venom records, some Motorhead albums. Motorhead's kind of sometimes considered part of the genre. You had bands like Raven, Tigers of Pantang, Angel Witch, Diamond Head, influential to Metallica. Metallica covered several of their songs and were influenced greatly by them. Some of those other bands like Raven, Tigers of Pantang, Diamond Head, not as popular as Iron Maiden. And Iron Maiden definitely went far and above the other bands in the genre and are the most famous band and popular heavy metal band to come out of the genre by far. This album, 2 singles were released off of it, Running Free and Sanctuary. Sanctuary was actually not included in the album for a long time until the late 90s when reissues would include it. My particular copy does not include it, just the original 8 songs. I do like the song Sanctuary, though. Wish it was on here, but it is what it is. The lineup consisted of Paul Di'Anno, lead vocals, Steve Harris, bass and vocals. Steve Harris was sort of the heart and soul of the band. He was the main songwriter. He is just a great bassist. Influential to the genre of heavy metal and the way he played. Dennis Stratton and Dave Murray on guitar and Clive Burr on drums. Now, this is the only Maiden album where Dennis Stratton was a guitarist. As many know, the classic twin guitar attack of Dave Murray and Adrian Smith. Adrian Smith would come on the next album, Killers, 1981. And Clive Burr would also get replaced by NWOBHM with their third album, Number of the Beast, after this and Killers. But I've always liked Clive Burr. I thought his drumming style was very just raw and spontaneous. NWOBHM's great, but Clive Burr just really works with this album and the next album. The way he played, I don't know, I might prefer it. All right. The name Iron Maiden, I always thought it meant like a maiden, talking about a woman, an Iron Maiden. But it's actually, Steve Harris came up with the name. It's actually a medieval torture device called an Iron Maiden. It's like a coffin with spikes in it. So that's crazy. I guess it kind of goes along with their mascot, Eddie, who would appear on all their album covers pretty much in some different form or another, sometimes carrying a flag, sometimes in a military outfit, sometimes just roaming the streets like in the first 2. Paul Di'Anno, as many know, or maybe don't know, but was the first singer for Iron Maiden. They actually started in 75, and they had a revolving door of lineup changes and just people in and out all the time, but they finally settled on this lineup, and Paul Di'Anno, the singer, who had some kind of punk influences before this, and he kind of had a punk look about him, sort of the leather jacket and the short curly hair, as opposed to long, traditional heavy metal hair. He only played on the first two albums, or sang on the first two albums, this and Killers. You kind of have two camps of Maiden fans, those who love the first two with Paul, and those who love all the rest of the stuff with Bruce, which came later, Bruce Dickinson. Some love both. I love both, but there certainly is a certain charm to these first two Maiden albums that, I don't know, they're different. I love Paul Di'Anno as a vocalist. He really works well with this early Maiden sound, the gruff, the punk sound, the rough and ready street tumbling street ready sound. Bruce Dickinson, fabulous singer, but this first album definitely has a distinct charm. They actually supported Judas Priest on a tour in 1980, Iron Maiden, who at the time had released several records. Judas Priest kind of had already been around for 5 or 6 years and had released some classic heavy metal genres or albums before this. And so they were, supporting on the Judas Priest tour, so that got them some recognition in 1980 to go along with this album, this debut, this classic debut. So many great songs on here. I mean, there's 8 songs, and they are Prowler, Remember Tomorrow, which is a beautiful ballad, Running Free, their epic Phantom of the Opera, with a lot of prog influences in there, a lot of change-ups. Transylvania, which is an instrumental. A lot of metal bands at the time didn't write instrumental songs. Black Sabbath, I believe, wrote a few, and I'm sure that Transylvania and other instrumentals like that would go on to and influence, bands like Metallica writing a lot of instrumentals. So, and there's actually 2 instrumentals on their next album, Killers, which could quite possibly be my favorite Iron Maiden album, but it's hard to say. I don't even know really what my favorite Maiden album is. I just like the first 5 or 6 very much. And then you have Strange World, which is sort of another ballad, beautiful song. Then you have Charlotte the Harlot, and which is a fun song. And then you have the title track, Iron Maiden, which wraps up the album, last track on the album. And it is a concert staple and a classic they play live to this day. Just 8 songs. It's a short album, not real long, but each song is a classic. Each song is just drop dead, stone cold classic. A lot of melody with a lot of these songs. Melody maybe not had been associated with a lot of metal bands, or people did not associate the word melody with metal bands, but there are some beautiful guitar melodies and vocal melodies in this album that really make it, I kind of think, that's what separated it from their peers in the new wave of British heavy metal genre. Is that melodic sensibility, I think, is what kind of separated these guys from the rest of the bunch, so to speak. Favorite tracks off the album for me? Well, truth be told, I like them all. I love them all, actually. Prowler's a good way to open it. Not my favorite song. It's kind of an up-tempo rocker. Remember Tomorrow, I love it. It's a beautiful, haunting, kind of a somber song. Just a classic. It's been covered multiple times. Metallica covered it years later. Running Free is sort of a punky, up-tempo rocker as well. Just that classic chorus. Just 16, a pickup truck, out of money, out of luck. I've got no place to call my own. Hit the gas and here I go. Phantom of the Opera, that might be my favorite song on the album. It's a 7-minute long sort of progressive epic. They wrote many epics in later years, but this was sort of their them dipping their toes in the water, so to speak, for writing epics. And it is an epic song. It's beautiful. It's well written. There's a lot of change ups. Like I said, it's progressive. There's a cool photograph of the guys right there. And I think Paul Di'Anno does a fine job on this album singing. He may not have the vocal chops, so to speak, of Bruce Dickinson, but there's just something about these first two albums. I might even like them the best. It's possible. I love new Number of the Beast and Power Slave, though, and Peace of Mind. I really do. They're great classic albums, but for sort of unpolished, no pretense, no pretentiousness, these first two are just, you just can't go wrong. They were never replicated, I don't think, this sound in these first two albums. The guitar harmonies are great. The rhythm section is tight. Steve Harris, the bass lines in this album are cranked up high in the mix, so you can hear them on almost every song, the bass lines, and they are wonderful. Great rhythm section, drums and bass together is just the meat and potatoes, the heart and soul of these songs, and the band in general, I think. Clive Burr, but Nico McBrain, who first played on Number of the Beast, always played well with Steve Harris. That rhythm section just made this band. And of course, twin guitar attack with Dave Murray and later Adrian Smith, which is considered sort of the classic twin guitar attack of Maiden by many. But Phantom of the Opera, great song again. Transylvania, it's a great instrumental. It's wonderfully played, talented band. You could tell they played so well together. Just great chemistry with the musicianship. Strange World is the next song, and it is kind of it is a ballad. It's not kind of a ballad. Beautiful song. Great guitar solos from Dave Murray and Dennis Stratton. And then you have the song Charlotte the Harlot, which is sort of a fun up-tempo rock song with a nice rhythm, kind of a beat, kind of a funky song, and a great chorus as well. Very catchy chorus. And then the last song, Iron Maiden. Wow, it's just a classic. My favorites, if I had to pick some, and I will, I'd say Remember Tomorrow, Running Free, Phantom of the Opera, Strange World, and Charlotte the Harlot. So that's like 5 out of 8. So you can't go wrong. And the other 3 are fantastic. They're just, those 5 are probably my favorite. Lyrics, mostly all written by the bassist Steve Harris. He was kind of the main songwriter, as I've mentioned. But Paul Di'Anno and Dave Murray also had songwriting credits on some of these songs for the arrangements of the songs, not so much the lyrics. For a score, this album, there's a cool picture inside there. I don't know if I showed that yet. For a score, this album, it's not perfect, but it's darn good, and I love it personally. I would give this album a 96 out of 100. It's just one of my favorites from the band, and I like many of their albums, both singers, you can argue about that all day, but to me, this album has always had a certain charm to it that maybe they lost later, you could argue, but it's a great debut, regardless of genre, band, singer, whatever. Great debut. Really kind of just shot them into the heavy metal, stardom, really. Mostly in the underground at this time, but really the seeds were planted right here. 96 out of 100 for Iron Maiden's debut. Cheers. Thank you for watching.